Hello, my name's Sharon Hurst. Welcome to my studio and to today's tutorial on bluebells. I really love April and May, and that time of year is so full of promise, isn't it? You have spring in full flush and everything's starting to grow, and it just means something to me. I love a warm sunny evening to go for a walk through the woods and to smell the bluebells, that gorgeous perfume as it rises up in the still evening air. I wondered if we could try and recreate that here today. So join me, let's see what we can do. Here we are, I'm working on a piece of Bockingford. It's £140 and it has quite a nice texture to it. It's not smooth, it's not hot pressed. I can't exactly call it rough because Bockingford now actually do a rough surface. So all we can say with this one is it's not, N-O-T, not hot pressed. I've stuck it down well with some good masking tape because I need it to stay where it is. I want to use quite a bit of water. And in the main, I'm going to go straight into this with masking fluid. I don't intend to be fiddling about trying to draw it. Let's be a little freer, shall we? Now, if that freaks you out, rest assured it also does me. It's not my style at all, normally. I'm taking a bar of soap and I want to use a good long brush here. It's a long haired brush, not quite a rigger brush, but something in between. And I'm loading it up with soap. Now the reason for that is because the soap will protect the hairs on the brush, and now I can go into masking fluid and not be concerned about the masking fluid hurting the brush. It acts as a resist. I want to draw up one long stem. Might not be able to do it in one hit, but up through here, one nice long stem. And I'm going to pull it up and round and curve it. Like that. Let's bring you in a little bit to see what I'm up to. There you go, you can see the light shining on it. Bear with me just for a minute, it will all become clear, trust me. And the bells, and they have these incredible little curly. Can you see that? Let's. Little curly, tiny little tails on the end of each petal. So I just want to come in and introduce these little tiny bells like this on little stem. Each one's on a little stem. Now the bells that I'm painting here, these are good old-fashioned English bluebells. If you see a bluebell that faces up to the sun instead of curving back on itself like this with a recurve, they are French bluebells. Interlopers. Each stem has this strange, let me put that there because it seems to me that the camera doesn't know what to focus on. Back like that. And we don't want too much of this, I just want to give the impression of my bluebells. One out here. When you get a bubble in the masking fluid, just burst it. Pop a little bit of masking fluid in the middle because the paint goes through the bubble and you get a blob of colour, which is not what we require here at all. I'm going to bring another stalk up here, through there. So the thicker the line, the harder I press on the paintbrush. And this one I'm going to curve round like that. And I'm not going to put too many bluebells on this, so you've got this tube affair like that, and then these little curves up. They're like little ballerina's skirts, fold back up on themselves, and where each one comes out of the stem, you've got these teeny little flicks. I'll show you the flicks. So paint the flower in, don't be too careful, and then here on the stem you get this little tiny flick. I'm going to bring you in even tighter for this one so that you can see what I'm playing at. So that's the bulk of the tube, and then these little skirts up either side, and where it joins the stem you have that little bit of a flick. Alright, I'm going to put one in from this side. I'm not going to do too many because I want to give the impression of distance. In this particular painting I'd like to work in 3 different very definite layers. I want to be thinking about real distance, and then we're thinking about the mid distance, and then the foreground. So that's where we want to go with that. So we're starting to get an idea here, and then through here I'm going to pull one more stem through up around there. And again, let's just do the little tube, little skirts like that. There's the flick. I'm just going to make it all look terribly random and quite interesting. Start thinking in a minute about the state of my brush. It might probably need a little bit more attention with regards to giving it a clean and starting again. Let's see what we can do. Up through here I want to just paint the start of a bud coming like that. They start in this strange kind of huddled shape. And we might have another one up through there. Like that. And at this stage, if you decided that you wanted to put a butterfly or something in there, this is when you'd be going about it. I'd also like to give the impression of maybe a leaf, so I'm using my brush right on the side there so that I get a good sweep. And then we might have a hint of something through here, like that. I don't want to do too many. So I want to do these separately myself in a second. And through here I'm just going to do a little bit of that to give the impression that there might be something coming up, growing through there. Rinse. What we need to do with this is give our brush a really good wipe. And it should be nice and clean. Lovely. It's just what we want. And that now has to be bone dry before I can go in there and do anything to it, because if I don't wait then I'm going to have difficulties with it. It will be a nightmare. I will get a messy brush. So we're just going to let that go, all dry. I've turned an extra light on, so now you can see exactly where I've been with my masking fluid. It makes life so much easier, doesn't it, to see what we've got. Now, it's well worth bearing in mind at this point that you may have chosen your colours, but it's a very good idea to have a little play first. And this is where my colour mixing book comes out, and I start to think about how I'm going to use my colours. Try the colours out, write down what you've done, and then you know you can always go back to this as a recipe book to see what's what. So I've looked here and I can see that I've used Cobalt and the Alizarin Crimson, and that's given me this pinky purple here. It's a bit dull. I'm not sure about that at all. Not really. Let's just have a play. So I'm going to, up here, up here I'm going to write in Bluebell Woods. And this is going to be my recipe. Now, choices we have, you and I, between us. I know for a fact that I want to use Sap Green for my grasses in front, and I'm also going to be using for the darker tone, this is Cascade Green, and it's a rather beautiful colour because it bleeds out into blue, into cerulean blue, so that's really rather fun. I'd like to use for a bit of shading Moonglow. So here's Moonglow. That's this rather interesting purpley colour. And regarding the flowers themselves, my choices are, I think I'm going to go for Cobalt because it's a nice clean bright blue, but that's not the colour of the Bluebells, is it? I could add something like this. This is Rose of Ultramarine. Daniel Smith colours, really rather good, as we all know. And Rose of Ultramarine is this. And if I add it into the Cobalt, I could land up with quite a nice purpley blue. So that might do me. See, that's really, really quite nice, isn't it? So that could do me. I know this colour also tends to separate out, so you can land up with some nice reds and blues in there as well. But what happens if we think about maybe using Cobalt Blue Violet? This is a different mauvey colour altogether. And that's that. So it's almost this, isn't it? So that's that colour. And then if I were to add a little bit more of the Cobalt, that would give me my bluer flowers. So there's that. Two choices. But I think that the route I want to go with this is maybe, I might go for that top colour. I really quite like the way that that splits and divides and granulates. So I think for this particular escapade here, I'm going to put away the Cobalt Blue Violet and I'm going to go with this top colour. And that is, this one up here is Rose of Ultramarine, and it's added to Cobalt Blue. So this is the Moonglow. Can you see how this colour has bled into it, and we've landed up with some really, really interesting, see the green in there, it's really fun, isn't it? So that's Moonglow. And then next to it, if we come out a little bit next to it, this colour here is Cascade Green. And again, see how the blue has bled out from the green. If we can encourage it to do that on the paper, I should be happy bunny. And this is Sap Green. So that's my recipe card for the colours I want to use on here. Okie dokie, my colours are ready. And I'm looking at the other materials I think that I might want to use. I've got some Tesco's table salt here, good old Tesco's, thin, fine table salt. And I think I might also have a little go with this Schminky Rhine Bleich Gold. It's rich pale gold and it's a gold powder. And I'm going to use that and sprinkle a little bit of that in there as well, just to give it a bit of extra ka-ching. You need a bit of ka-ching, don't you? The salt down the bottom could give the impression of ferns and all sorts of things growing, so we'll try some of that too. I'm going to use my really rather nice goat's hair hake, one of my favourite brushes, and in this particular instance I want to paint a vignette. What's a vignette? It's just the middle of the picture and the paint fades out. So I'm not going to paint the whole lot to the edges. Well, I don't want to do that. I want to do this lovely sort of little bit in the middle. And to do that, to give ourselves time to enable the paint to work on the paper, we're going to come in and I want to wet all of the area that I'm going to paint. So let's have a little think about this. I want it to be shiny. I'm going to bring it all around here in this lovely circle to start with. And effectively that will go into the paper and be absorbed, and it will give that paint time to sit on the paper and do a bit of hard work rather than just going straight into the paper. There you go. Now, it's a good idea always to have darker colours in the corners, but first off I'm going to start with my background. I want a thin, fine, pale green for that because I don't want to assault your senses when you're looking at the bluebells. So I'm just putting in some of this sap green. This is the woodland in the distance. So we're just going to throw that into there. I want it to be much more definite down here, so a good brushful, and I'm popping that down into this area here so that it's much more concentrated. And it's flicking in the water, and I really don't care about that. I quite like all that. I'm going to do more of that in a minute anyway. So we've got some darker green there, or more intense green. And then I want to come in to my corners. I'm going to drop in now some of the Cascade green, and let's see what this can do. And you see, look, this is what I call a runner paint, because you put it in and it just explodes into the artwork. Whoosh, off it goes. Look at that, look at that. And it bleeds out into this green and the blue, and this is why I wanted my water to be pulled out, so that I knew that that paint would do that. Now I'm cleaning my brush because I want to drop in a little bit of moon glow for some shadows. So I'm working quite quickly. Moon glow is coming up through here, and this is going to give the impression of woodlands and some trees. Anything that's happening around the periphery. And I just want to get rid of some of that because, as I say, I want it all to just bleed and blend and disappear and dissipate. Watercolour always dries up paler than you expect. So if you want some real effects, make sure you just go in again and you add a few more bits and pieces. So these are going to be giving the impression of leaves. Still really quite wet, so everything's just bleeding and moving, so that's okay. Now this is a good time now to just introduce a little bit of salt. Don't want too much, so I'm going to drop some in the palm of my hand, and then I can just sprinkle it maybe in the corners down here. If you put too much on, it takes too much out, and then you land up with no colour, and I don't want that. I want to have some colour on my work. Get rid of the rest of that in the bin, and then I'm going to go to a smaller brush, so this is a number 4, and I'm going to take some of the Cascade green, and I want to pull it and draw it right up through the work. Alright, so you're just going to pull some up and through to give the impression of grasses, twigs, like that. Salt's working down here quite nicely. So we can do that whilst it's all still wet. I can come in with this. Now this, all you've got to do with this is pop your brush in the end of the paint, the powder, and then just have a bit of sprinkle. I don't want too much, I just want to give the impression of a few glittery bits in these fairy woods. We need to get it off the end of the brush, otherwise we're going to land up looking as though we have been glitzed and blitzed. So let's take that off there like that. And if you want to, you can take a scratchy tool, anything you've got, either a sharpened piece of wood like this, or I like my, you've seen this before, my porcupine quill. And I can come in here and I can pull that through just on a few bits and pieces, and this will give me shapes and marks in the paint too. And what happens here is you actually damage, you can see up tight, you damage the paper and the paint runs into the crease and gives you a darker line. Just bear in mind that is a once only, you can't do that again and again, and you certainly can't take it out. But it gives you these lovely lines that look just like grasses, thin fine grasses. So that's quite a nice thing to do as well. And we've got quite a nice little vignette there, haven't we? All I want to do now, it's drying, slowly it's drying. So with my number 4 brush, I want to do something through here. I'm going to take blue, let's take the cobalt blue, and I'm going to add a little bit of this purpley colour to it. And I'm just going to come in and through this middle area where we might expect to see bluebells growing, we're dropping in some extra bluebells. You can put some out to the side where the paper's dry or damp, and that will give you a bit of an interesting side to your picture. It carries it through. But that gives us the impression of extra bluebells through in the woods. And now we wait and we see what happens when it dries. What is going to happen to that? Our next step, to give the impression of distance, we had all this lovely sort of muzzy, fuzzy, diffused area in the background, but now to increase the feeling of depth in our picture, we need to pull in these fine, fine lines of just leaves really, but to give the impression of something in the midground. And all I've done here is taken fine, thin sap green and paint through your picture and bring some leaves up through like this. Make them crisscross, don't put too many in, and don't pull too much out of the picture. That would say to somebody, look outside of the picture. You want to keep their eyes in, bring things in. And then I've done the same again with thin cascade green, and this is a number 4 brush, and I'm just pulling it up and down at the bottom, just gently blur it. Don't want to see anything down there, and you're giving this impression of all these little leaves. Some, see there, look, get rid of it, just blur it. All different lengths like that. Then I've taken my blue, the cobalt blue again, and here and there I've put in some bluebells in the background like this. Pop them in, rinse your brush, dab off the extra liquid, and then just one side of it, just come in and soften it. Let's do some here. I'm going to bring you in tight so that you can see what I'm going to do. So this is the cobalt blue. And in here I'm just going to drop in the impression of bluebells through here. Rinse, get rid of the drip on the cloth, and then just come in gently, soften one side. So that, again, that gently diffuses away into the background. And then finally, some blue on the brush. Take something else to smash it against, and we're going to drop in some extra bluebells that way. So not too many, but make it look as though it's a forest floor full of beautiful flowers. I'm drying my work between each stage, going over it with a hairdryer, purely and simply because it speeds my work up. It does mean as well that if your paper is buckled in any way with the washes that you're giving it, the hairdryer will shrink it back and it will flatten again, so that's got to be a good thing too. I'm going to come in, and now is the time to have the salt away, so let's get rid of that. And I can get rid of my masking fluid now, and I'm going to use one of these clever little toolies. This is called a mask away, and it's just like the crepe sandals we used to wear back in the 70s, 80s, and it's a clever piece of equipment because you can just use it on this and it takes all of the masking fluid away without even trying very hard. Marvellous, look at that. So I can come over here, and you know, you've got to bear in mind that on a hot day I hate handling my work and doing this job because I'm putting grease on the paper and perspiration, so to do it like this is nice and clean, keeps the work beautifully clean. And it also means that that stays on there and turns into a nice little ball like that that you can pick off, rather than having it rolling around on your floor for you to tread in. My poor old cats land up with it in their fur, it's horrible. So I'm very grateful nowadays to be having that. Using a brush just to get rid of the extra bits again, so that I'm not putting my hands across the work. And now we start painting our bluebells. I don't want to put in too much detail, and I want to think about where my light's coming from, and I'm thinking probably that I'm looking at something from above, and that really means that all the little skirts on my flowers are going to stay fairly light. And the easy way to do this job is to choose a nice brush with a good point on it. So this is my number 4. And I'm going to help myself to the cobalt blue to start with, and let's do a flower right in the middle where you can see it. So I want the paler outer edges of the skirts, and then I'm going to come up the main flower bell and come into my purpley colour and just drop that into there like that, and let it run down into the blue. And let the paint do the work. Let the paint do the work. So I'm just going to tighten up that edge because it's scruffy. And then I'm coming up the page. So again, start with your blue, your little skirts that curl out like that. Pull that up through the rest of the bell, and then don't wash the brush, just come into the purple and pull that down into blue, like so. And we just quietly carry on with what we're doing, like that. Some of them you can make a little bit lighter if you want to. Bring darkness down one side, like that. Mix it as you go along, like that. Just gently work your way through. So here we go. The skirt. I'm going to have a go at 2 at once here. I'm just showing off, seeing if I can do it. Come into my mauvey colour, drop that in. And be warned, because these are all colours that just rush into each other. They love each other very much, and they just pour into each other as though they're embracing long lost friends. And that's good, isn't it? Because if you know that your paints do that, you can use that then to your benefit. Know what your paints do, because if you don't, that could take you by surprise, seriously, when you least want it to. So around there, like that, put it in. I've got a bit of granulation going on here, which is quite nice, that's fun. To here. Now I'm coming down into the darker area now. So does that make me think? Make those paler. Make them stand out. Let's see what happens. If it doesn't work, we can always go back. We could do something else. You can make them darker. But that area there is in the dark. Let's see how we go. Pull the purpley pink up through into there. Clean brush, go in, just manipulate it a bit. Push the blue back, pull a bit of light into it. As long as your paint's shiny and still working, you can move things around. Now you see I've lost the bottom of that, so what we're going to have to do now is think again. Don't ever be frightened of thinking and thinking again. And that's the purpley pink. So I've come in on the bottom now with that, and I'm just going to make that a bit darker. Does that stand out better? Yes, it does. Okay, so it's balanced and adjusting. See, I don't think that stands out well. I don't like that very much. So again, I'm going to pick up the purpley colour, the pink, and I'm just going to pull that gently round there. Don't leave it hard, come in with a damp brush, go into the side that you want to blend and just tickle it like that, and you get a decent edge on your plant that way. So that works. Back down here. So down here. That's my blue. I want to leave those just blue. What happens if I just leave them blue? Do they stand out? Not so much. So again, let's go back to the mauve. Just got to be practical and pragmatic about it. Look at it, see what it does. Don't like it, fiddle it. So around there like that. Pink. That really is a lovely colour, isn't it? Rose of ultramarine, that is. Nice. Like Daniel Smith's colours. I'm going to take my blue, and this one here, what I want to do with that, you often find that they have these lovely little striations up through the flower. So I'm just going to introduce couple of those on that one because it's getting lost. You could do that with some others in a little bit, so we can just play and fiddle with that. So we might do that in a minute with some of the others. Down here. Let's do a couple at once. Keeping their little skirts quite frilly and quite shaggy. It's not the sort of picture I want to get involved in and make it too defined and complicated. It's not what I'm aiming for. I want loose and free, which is very on me actually. I can do that on my backgrounds, but I do struggle with trying to do that with some other things like this. I like to get in there and do all that detail, but you know, a picture doesn't always call for it, does it? So we've just got to be sensible people. It's just difficult sometimes. It's good for you though to have a think about doing things in a different way. It doesn't hurt. It hurts while you're doing it and you're thinking, oh, I can't do this. But just keep going because you never know. You never know. Now these funny little flower buds are really, really dark. So with those I am going to go into the neat Rose of Ultramarine, and I'm adding I think I might add this, the Moon Glow, to it, and then a little bit of the blue. So it's a really quite dark purple, and I'm going to use that to come in there to paint in these little baby buds. A funny little shape there, really tightly laid. Now we're going to put them in dark like that, and then we can go in later and add bring out a little bit of colour to give it a highlight. So with this, I want 3 of those. So I'm looking in this area here, and I'm thinking I'm going to just put the tip in there like that. And then I'm going to take water, and I'm going to go in politely, get hold of it like that, and nudge it and budge it and smudge it so that it just disappears down into the distance. Leave these two choices. You can either go in there now and we can lift out a highlight while it's wet. So clean brush, keep it dry, thirsty brush this is called. And then you can come in like that and you can lift it out like that. And the key to that is just having a really, really clean brush. Keep it clean, keep it thirsty. So when I say thirsty, I mean on that cloth. And then come in, and then that will lift your highlight out for you. This one I want to do when it's dry, show you what I would do with that as well. So just different options, that's all. If we want to tickle these, I need a smaller brush. So now I'm going to go into something like a number 2. And using a mixture of the blue and the purple on the brush, I might come into these and I might be thinking about, as I say, putting these striations down, some of them. You have these little lines. So just on some of them, you don't have to do all. And to give the impression of the little skirts up here, you might want to put a shadow behind that skirt there, like that. But I don't want to do too much of that. Again, I just don't want the detail. I don't want to get into that. Now, each little flower has its own stem, and the stem is quite blue and quite dark. So again, we're going to take a mixture of this blue with the purple. Still using the small brush, I want to come in and pull through my little stalks like that. So we'll do that first before we do any stemmage. Just pull those down. Keep it loose, keep it loose, keep it free. I don't want to be sitting here meticulously adding bits and fiddling bits. Gently, gently does it, gently. And where this joins the stem, there's this strange little bit. This strange little flick. So up here. And it's all these silly little things that when we look at something like this, we know what it is because our brain recognises what it's seeing. So these are the little things that say, oh, hang on a minute, I know what that is, that's a bluebell. So we've done that and we've got that in there. Now the stems are interesting as well because they really start off quite dark green. I'm going to use the Cascade Green for that. And then they become Sap Green, but as they come up and through, they turn quite sort of purpley blue. So this one's going to be quite fun. And I think I'll go back to the original brush that I used when I was laying in the masking fluid. This is a Deco Art. It's a Kolinsky quill. So it's not quite a rigger, but it's a quill brush. It's a bit longer than your average brush. And it just means it carries more paint, but you can get a nice fine point on it, as you can see now when I hold it like this. Lovely point. And if I start with a Cascade Green, make sure your paint is probably like this, single cream, because if you go any thicker than that, you won't get a smooth run with the brush. And I'm going to take this up through, beyond, through in front of that leaf. Now I want to change to Sap Green, and I'm not going to clean the brush. I'm just going straight into the Sap Green paint, and I'm running it from the Cascade Green up and through. Okay, and then that's coming up through here, and I'm going to lighten it up a little bit by just dipping in the water but still having the paint on the brush. So like that. But hey, look, it would be darker underneath that flower. That flower would cast a shadow. And then as we go up through here, suddenly it starts to turn blue. This bluey, greeny, grey, ugly colour. So this is what we call muck off the palette. So we're coming through there. And I've literally gone into this muck off the palette. Bit of all of the colours. So through there, pull it through like that. I can use that colour right there to add a little bit more shadow, and I can come in there and maybe add a bit more shadow there. So that's all right, that stands out. What we haven't got, if the light's coming from here, we could do with just something a little bit darker on that edge. So I'm going back to my Moon Glow. And whilst it's still wet, I'm just going to run the Moon Glow down that edge to make that darker. What happens if we try that right down the edge, lower down? So again, I'm picking up Moon Glow and I'm coming in under there. Steady hand. And what happens down here? I don't like all that. What we're going to do is take one of our brushes. What should we have? We'll have a number 4. And it's damp, and I'm going to get hold of the paint, and I'm just going to disappear it. That's a technical term, that is, for painting. It's just gone. Just gone. I don't want it there. Don't fiddle with it too much, because you know what we're all like. We keep going in there and we keep on doing this. Don't do that. Just leave it alone. Let it go. Let it go. Be brave. Leave that brush there because I'm going to need it in a minute. So let's come up here through this stem, this stalk. So I start with my Cascade Green. Up through here. I want it then to be Sap Green. So go straight into the Sap Green. Pull that through like that. I want it to be a bit lighter, so water, and then it suddenly kind of goes purpley blue. So we go into the muck off the palette again, and we pull that down, round through there, and whilst we're there with the darker colour, pull it right through. Go back, grab some of the Moon Glow and pull the Moon Glow down through there. And what happens again when we get down to the bottom, we're going to take our bigger brush, clean it, get rid of the extra drips. So it's damp but not too wet. Get hold of the bottom and just disappear it. So pull it down and then pull it back up. I'm going to do the same with these leaves. Oh, we've got another stem, look. If you don't like that harsh edge, wait till it's dry. And I'm just going to go in there and soften it. And in the act of moving it around, the damp brush, almost dry brush, I've lifted out a little bit of light on the stem, like that. So do we like that effect there where we've pulled some colour out? Yes. So if this is dry enough, we can come into that and we can lift a little bit of colour out of there. It just makes it more interesting, doesn't it? So we'll do exactly the same thing up through here. I want to start with the Cascade Green, same as before. And this one is going behind this, so there's the Cascade to start with. And to get to about there, and now I'm going to switch it to the Sap Green so that I have the different colour behind the darker paint in front, like that. And then I'm going to start with the Muck Off the Palette colour to pull it up through this area here. It's terrible, isn't it, calling a paint muck off the palette, but you know what I mean. And then I want the darker edge down below, so I'm going into my Moon Glow, pull that through there and right through there. And I don't have to do anything with that because it goes down behind this leaf. I think what might do us a favour though in a minute when it's dry, I'm going to lift out a little bit of light just through the top of that, because I think it's a little bit too dark and the light would be shining on it. So let's do that in a minute. Leaf wise, what should we do with the leaves? I want them to be quite bright. I'd really like to go with the idea of the Sap Green leaves for these. So let's just see how we go with it. If we put Sap Green on the top of them, let's just see what happens. And then I'm going to use the dark green underneath. Like that. Rinse the brush, dab it dry, and then I want to come in through the middle, that middle area, and just do a bit of blending. I want to make the tip of this leaf dark because it doesn't stand out. So this is the Moon Glow, coming in with Moon Glow, and I'm going to do that. And then I'm just coming in underneath with that. And we need to soften that off as well. So again, use your number 4, and you're just gently going to wipe all the way along. Keep it clean, like that. And then let's fade this out too. So coming in there, get hold of it and just muzz it, fuzz it, do your thing, and then push it back. We've got 2 stems here in a minute, haven't we? Missed those. Okay, so let's go into the Sap Green again. See, I don't think that's going to show up there at all. It's not, is it? Look at that. Even if we go into a thicker, darker, brighter Sap Green, it's still not really going to do too much on the underneath. So whilst that's still wet, I'm going to come back to the Moon Glow, and I want to just run it along that underside where it would be dark through there. And again, I'm going to get hold of the base and just blend like that. It vanishes. You see, that edge isn't dark enough at all, is it? We might have to go in there. We'll see what happens if we lift some, and if we don't like lifting it, then we'll do something else. It's all right. We can do all of these things. Just got to be explorers, paint explorers. This one, it's interesting. This is where it's going to be light. this is where it's going to be dark, and it's going to be darker here. So what we'll do to start with, let's put the light area in, which would be there. Then it would be trotting down like this, much darker. So I'm still on Sap Green, just using it more thickly. And I think that I'd like to introduce a little bit of Cascade Green down through there. And I want to have Cascade Green here, on this end of it. We join them together by damp brush, dab dab to get rid of the wet, and then I'm coming in the side that I want to blend, and I'm just going to pull it like that. Okay. Is that quite dark enough along this top edge? Absolutely not. So here is Sap Green, and I'm just going to pull it down through there. So that defines the edge now, we can see it. So that's better, isn't it? It stands out. This is still a bit of all nothing or something or anything. So how about coming in there and seeing if we can lift some? So it's quite dry now, and I want to come in with a damp brush and just pull some out. Keep it clean and keep it dry. So thirsty brush, clean and dry. Yep, like that, that's all right. In fact, I like it so much I'm going to do a little bit in there. And I'm also going to introduce some light into that area. And I'm also going to pull a little bit down through there. So that just introduces a little bit of light. I want to come in there, get rid of that. So I'm going to nudge, budge, smudge that, like that. And then we've got to think about these two stalks. And again, they are really, really quite dark. So I'm using the muck off the palette scenario, and I'm having a bit of green on there as well, so that turns it into an interesting grey. And I want to pull that down through there. Like that, and then I'm going to introduce another one through here without putting my hand on it. That's not quite dark enough, that one's going to need to be quite dark. So there's the blue, there's the green. Let's try that. Down through there like that. That's okay, and then with that, both of them, I want to come in and I want to just get a hold of the ends of those as well and pull them out like that. We said we were going to have a little play with this, didn't we? What could we do with that? We can take our damp brush and use this same technique to come in and lift here as well. So come in a bit tighter and see what I'm doing. So it's a clean brush, damp brush. Just drops a bit of light into it, doesn't it? There we are. I'm also going to do that down through there. So just a little down that stem, like that. And then we can look at it and we can decide if we feel that we need to fiddle with anything else. I'd just like to pull couple little lines through there so that they're not quite so flat. Not sure about this at all. This is a bit lost here behind here, so what I'm going to do there is just come in. We're just balancing now, everybody, we're just balancing. And where that tonal values of those two are too similar, just going to lift a little bit out of that so that it's lighter behind this. Just let it dry for a minute. Just let it dry. This one, the very first one I did, I think is too dark. So again, I'm just going to lift a little bit of light out of it. So we can just do that and put a little bit of ka-ching on some of those as the sunlight hits them as it comes down through the canopy. That's quite, isn't it? Let's do some on that one as well. Of course, you could do that if you wanted to with some white. You could go in with some white gouache. I don't have a problem with using that. I know some artists don't like it, but I don't mind using that. I think sometimes it has a place. But that is really all I would do to give myself some interesting bluebells sitting in the woods at this time of year, and it gives you a fairly quick and easy picture and some really lovely techniques to play with. So there you have it. I hope you enjoyed our bluebells today. I certainly enjoyed being here with you. Hope to see you again soon. Bye for now.